The aims of the workshop, which will last approximately 30 minutes, will be an overview of child exploitation, with a particular focus on child sexual exploitation, child criminal exploitation and county lines. We'll look at what child exploitation looks like in North Yorkshire, and we'll explore learning from the National Child Safeguarding Review Panel and what it means for us as practitioners. We'll look at indicators and signs of exploitation and how to respond to concerns, as well as where to go for further information and support. To start, we'll give you a brief overview of contextual safeguarding, a phrase first coined by Dr. Carleen Furman. It explores the places and spaces young people spend their time and the harms that they may be exposed to within the communities, their school environment, within their parks, bus stations, clubs, etc., and the streets where they may spend their time. Contextual safeguarding is an approach to safeguarding that responds to young people's experiences of harm outside of the home, for example with peers, in schools and in neighbourhoods. Interweaved throughout all those rings around a young person, it's important to consider their online world. For young people, online and offline are not considered separate entities. Their online space is just as important as the physical places and spaces they're spending their time. Just to the right of the image, you will see some of the terminology linked to child exploitation and contextual safeguarding that we will be covering today. Let's start by looking at what child exploitation actually is. It's important to recognise that there is no nationally agreed definition of exploitation, which can sometimes lead to confusion. North Yorkshire Safeguarding Children's Partnership uses the Home Office definition, which defines child criminal exploitation as something that occurs when an individual or group takes advantage of an imbalance of power to coerce, control, manipulate or deceive a child or young person under the age of 18. The victim may have been criminally exploited even if the activity appears consensual. It does not always involve physical contact. It can also occur through the use of technology. Criminal exploitation often happens alongside sexual or other forms of exploitation, and it's broader than just county lines and includes, for instance, children forced to work on cannabis farms, to commit theft, shoplift or pickpocket, or to threaten other young people. The Home Office defines child sexual exploitation as something that occurs when an individual or group takes advantage of an imbalance of power to coerce, manipulate or deceive a child or young person under the age of 18 into sexual activity in exchange for something the victim needs or wants, and or the financial advantage or increased status of the perpetrator or facilitator. The victim may have been sexually exploited even if the sexual activity appears consensual. And again, it does not always involve physical contact. It can also occur through the use of technology. So the key point to take out of here is that young people can be exploited even if it appears that they have consented to what's happened to them. The young person is still a victim of child abuse and must be treated as such. So what is county lines? County lines is based around gangs and criminal networks exporting illegal drugs into one or more areas within the UK using a dedicated mobile phone line or deal line, often given a slang nickname with any terminology, for example, a J line, a D line. The image shows a visual representation of some of the lines across the UK, and you can see from that image just how prevalent and complex the issue is. North Yorkshire is a target for county lines, given the rurality of our county. Importing drugs using county lines from surrounding cities and more urban areas, and then throughout our county, is a recurring theme. They will target young people from rural counties who have perhaps not had any previous involvement with police. These are often known as clean skins, as they're often not known to services and therefore less likely to be spotted. They are likely to exploit children and vulnerable adults to move and store the drugs and money, and they will often use coercion, intimidation, violence, including sexual violence and weapons. Some of you may have heard of the word cuckooing, based on the cuckoo bird who takes over the nest of other birds. Perpetrators will often take over a person's house and use that property to facilitate exploitation. These perpetrators are highly organised criminal networks and use sophisticated and frequently evolving techniques to groom young people. Our role as partners is vital in trying to gather and share information to try and keep up with the ever-evolving tactics and methods used. So I just wanted to share some key facts that came out of a national learning review. The review highlighted the case of 21 children from 17 different local authorities who had died or been seriously injured as a result of being exploited. The first key point is ethnicity and gender are factors. Nearly 3/4 were male and black and minority ethnic groups. In North Yorkshire, we do see a split with gender, with males being more commonly identified as being criminally exploited and females sexually exploited. North Yorkshire is not as ethnically diverse as some other local authorities, but it still needs to be a factor we could take into account, especially in relation to young people who are unaccompanied asylum seekers. The second point, and a key one, known risk factors were not always an indicator. Out of the 21 cases, only 2 of the young people were looked after children, and most were not known to children's social care. From a school point of view, school exclusions were a key trigger point, with 17 out of 21 cases where the young people had been excluded. Trusted relationships are critical, and those critical moments can also extend to school exclusions, physical violence, and first arrests. Parental involvement is nearly always a protective factor, and we will be talking about what resources schools can use to involve parents later. And finally, there needs to be a greater focus on disrupting perpetrators. Again, something we'll talk about later when we look at our MACE processes. So, looking at North Yorkshire, the most important thing to highlight is that despite North Yorkshire being a relatively low crime, largely rural county, criminal and sexual exploitation of children happens here too. There is a common misconception that it doesn't happen here and that exploitation is only an issue for larger cities and more urban areas, as that is what tends to be portrayed in the media. Unfortunately, it can happen. In all towns and rural areas across North Yorkshire, it affects all communities and children from all walks of life. The ways in which criminals target and groom children in rural areas may be slightly different to those living in cities. Children living in the countryside are often more isolated. Criminals can target that isolation and boredom and lack of opportunity by offering things like excitement, attention, and money. Criminals may also look to target young people in the country because there may be less of a police presence, more unmanned bus or train stations, and sparser CCTV. They take advantage of the misconception that exploitation doesn't happen here, as they feel that people aren't looking for it. We also know that exploitation takes place both online and in the places and spaces where young people spend their time, often with the two overlapping. Places and spaces where exploitation can happen can include bus stations, parks, people's houses, beauty spots, car parks, sports venues, etc. And it happens online through young people being targeted through social media and online gaming, for example, through the posts they may see glamorizing activities such as drug dealing and encouraging young people to try substances. It can be quite hidden, but hidden in plain sight. The signs can be difficult to spot and require people to be curious. If they see a change in a child's behaviour, they need to understand why that may be happening and not just assume that the child is at fault, and most importantly, share and report any concerns. To start to look at the signs and indicators of child exploitation, I'd like to show you Alfie and his story. Take the time to watch the video and afterwards pause for a few seconds and think about the following. What are some of the signs that you may see that might raise some worries or concerns that Alfie may be being exploited? Think about the things that you would see in a school setting, but bear in mind that you won't see Alfie in a school setting at any time in this video. Secondly, think about what some of the signs that may be picked up in a community setting.
I kept walking, tried not to show how much it hurt. People were looking at me funny, or not looking at me at all. Bruises were swelling up all over. Pain shot through me as I felt the crunch of broken glass beneath my feet. A woman coming the other way shook her head and muttered something. You what? She looked at me like I was scum. I stared at her as I carried on, and I wasn't looking where I was going and tripped. It absolutely killed. I didn't want anyone to see I was crying. I shouted angrily after the woman, but she wouldn't hear me. I knew I had to keep moving. I still had a 10-minute walk until I would get home. I was always embarrassed if one of my friends came to our flat. The windows were boarded up and we didn't have proper furniture. It was a mess and most days Mum was drunk. One of my mates made a big deal about us not having carpets or wallpaper. After that, I didn't ask anyone else around. I just hung about the streets and parks. When I started secondary school, I made new mates. And there was nothing to do, so we made our own fun. We were banned from most of the shops. I got caught nicking once, and the shopkeeper held me prisoner until the old bill got there. They took me home, and Mum went mad that I brought coppers around. I don't understand why she was bothered. I never had any money, but some of my older mates did. They started buying us drinks, cans of Coke, and sometimes beer. They shared out fags, and I thought they were real generous. I asked Alex where he was getting his money from, and he said it was from his fam. Alex was in care and hadn't seen his mum for years, so I don't understand what he meant. He said that he'd introduce me one day. One time, me and Alex were having a fag, when he got a call on his crappy little Nokia phone that I'd never seen before. Alex said that he had to go see Dave, and that I could come with him. The address he'd been given was a dirty-looking house. Alex told me to wait near the door, as he'd only be a minute. I saw Dave slyly pass Alex a wrapped-up bag that Alex quickly shoved into his bag. Dave looked at me and nodded. Then we left. For my 13th birthday, I really hoped that Mum got me some new trainers, as mine were wrecked. But instead she gave me some DVDs she got down at the pub. I said thanks, but didn't tell her that we didn't have a DVD player, or that I sold them. On the night, Alex gave me some beer and a joint, and we got smashed. It was a right laugh. Dave turned up and said he heard it was my birthday, and that I needed some new trainers. I couldn't believe it when he gave me 80 quid and told me to go treat myself. I didn't know what to say, but he just smiled and said, "This is what families do for each other." And I told him I owed him one, and he told me not to worry about it. I hung out with the group more and more. They helped me to see that we needed to stick together, because everyone else was against us. One night, Dave asked me to help him by holding onto a bag for a few days for him. I told him of course I would, and was surprised when he gave me another 100 quid and told me not to go mess with it. I took it home and hid it. I was dying to know what was in it, but I didn't look. Dave trusted me and gave me more money than I'd ever held in my hands before. I hid that too, as I didn't want Mum finding it and asking questions or spending it. After that I did more jobs for Dave. Alex said that I was a proper part of the street fam now. He had a phone that only the fam could reach him on, and he was going away a lot, out of town. We had more money and new experiences than we'd ever had. It was amazing. I knew what was paying for all of this. We were moving and selling drugs, but we were doing it as a family. And it felt good that they believed me to do it right. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had a good future. Like I was in control. I was moving small amounts. The drugs were already wrapped, and I had to hide them in something like a drawstring bag or a paracetamol box. I was out one day when Dave pulled up in his car. He'd asked me if I'd seen Alex. I hadn't. He told me that when I did, I had to tell him that it was all over.
See Alex, you tell him he's out.
Alright.
Alright.
And he told me I should meet him on Friday at 9 at the usual place. He said it was time I stepped up. It was Friday afternoon and I did see Alex, but it was being off with me. I told him what Dave said. He showed me that he had a tag on his ankle. And he said Dave would want me more now, as I was still clean. He looked at me strange. Funny thing is, getting his tag has given me my freedom. That was the last time I ever saw of him. I met Dave. He said I was going for a ride with Jay. I went to go and get in Jay's car, but he stopped me and popped the boot open and told me to get in.
No. Get in.
At first, I thought he was joking, but he looked dead serious. We travelled for over an hour. It was horrible, and a couple of times I started to freak out. When we finally got there, Jay led me into a house. Everyone inside was out of it. There was this big guy on the sofa with a young girl, and Jay told this nervous-looking guy to get the stuff. He fetched a bag of heroin and then slumped into a chair.
There's a phone. Don't miss the calls. I'll be back in a few days for the money.
He told me to take the calls and sell drugs until he came back. I stood there and didn't know what to do. I sat down for a fag with my hands trembling. I was there for 3 days. I took calls on the phone and all sorts of people came to the door. I let them in and sold them drugs. Sometimes they stayed there for a few hours. Sometimes they were straight off. The nervous guy stayed. He was always high. And I figured this must have been his house. I counted the money I'd taken. There was more than a couple of grand, and I kept it close to me. I was starving and bored, so I was relieved when Jay came back. He took the money but gave me a couple of notes and told me to get the train home. He said to take a packet back home with me. I tried to tell him that I didn't even know how to get a train and that the packet was too big for me to hide inside my mouth. He told me I should hide it up in my ass. It really hurt. When I finally got home, I was knackered. Then Mum gave me the, "Where the hell have you been?" She said she'd nearly had to report me missing and get the coppers round again. I just needed some rest and tried to get my head straight. Next day I saw Dave. He told me to get in the car. He gave me 200 quid and smiled. He said, "How else would you earn money like that, Alfie? You're with us now." He said he'd take me to get a haircut. He told me that I was doing well and that he was proud of me. Nobody had ever said that to me before.
So, if we have concerns about a young person, what do we do? All schools have a safeguarding policy about how to share safeguarding concerns, and any exploitation concerns should be shared in exactly the same way as any safeguarding concern. In North Yorkshire, our process for supporting young people who are at risk of exploitation is detailed in our May strategy, which states that all children in North Yorkshire who are vulnerable to exploitation and abuse are effectively identified and protected by services which are delivered in a coordinated and informed way that consistently responds to the risks and improves the outcomes for our children, their families, and the wider community. If a child is identified by a professional as potentially being at risk of exploitation, they should submit a safeguarding referral form to a Children and Families Service, adhering to the usual guidance and practices around consent and information sharing. This will then be received by the Multi-Agency Screening Team, or the MAST, who consist of professionals from Children's Social Care, Early Help, North Yorkshire Police and Harrogate District Foundation Trust. The appropriate and relevant MAST professionals are involved in the screening of the referral, deciding on the right service to meet the child and their family's needs. Depending on the outcome of the screening, an allocated worker will work with the child, their family and other professionals who are involved to identify what risks the child or young person may be exposed to, and will then complete an exploitation risk assessment containing the views of all involved. If during the course of this discussion there are specific contextual safeguarding concerns that link the child or young person to any locations that may present a risk of harm or any individuals or groups who may pose a risk by exploitation, these themes will be sent to the Level 2 coordinator. for multi-agency problem solving through the locality MACE Level 2 meetings, which we will discuss in a moment. So across North Yorkshire, we tackle exploitation across 2 levels. MACE Level 1. So once completed, the exploitation risk assessment is then sent back to the MAST for a multi-agency view of the risk level and scrutiny regarding the risk management around this child and the contextual safeguarding concerns. It allows partners to offer challenge regarding the risk level and risk management plans for the young person. This case discussion takes place across partners in the MAST team alongside the allocated worker and any other local professionals required. The meeting will result in an agreement as to the risk level, which can be one of 4 outcomes: high risk, medium risk, low risk, or no risk. Plans will be put in place and reviewed, agreed based on that risk level. Our Level 2 meetings are chaired across our 7 district areas and discuss information relating to the links between children at risk or subject of exploitation, perpetrators or individuals who may pose a risk by exploitation, locations that may pose a risk of harm, and community intelligence. The meetings contain 4 key components: the identification and assessment of perpetrators and/or individuals who may pose a risk by exploitation, the sharing of community intelligence related to perpetrators or individuals who may pose a risk by exploitation, as well as locations where harm is being caused within communities. Identify the community links between victims, perpetrators, and individuals who may pose a risk of exploitation, and the locations through locality mapping exercises. This includes any concerns raised by other local authorities and private residential home providers, and settings around children from other authority areas who are placed in North Yorkshire. And to develop local, robust locality partnership action plans to develop intelligence, pursue and prosecute perpetrators, and disrupt exploitation within our communities. These are key partnership meetings to attend, so we can all work together to share vital information to disrupt exploitation. There's no hierarchy to the meetings, and all partners are welcome to share their key information. For example, police, schools, community and voluntary sectors. Often those who have the most vital eyes and ears on the places and spaces young people are spending their time. At this point, I just wanted to bring to your awareness a section of the North Yorkshire Safeguarding Children's Partnership website, Be Aware. This section is dedicated to tackling and raising awareness of child exploitation in North Yorkshire. The site was originally launched in March 2021 as a professionals page and has key and up-to-date information for professionals around all elements of exploitation. The partnership work hard to keep this page as relevant and current as possible and share key updates with partners. So, example, a most recent piece of work by the Children's Society has shared new information around child financial exploitation, and this has just been added. As part of the preventative work in our MACE strategy, we wanted to build on the site to include key information delivered specifically for parents and carers as well as young people based on the things they told us they felt it was important to hear. We've spoken with families and young people who've experienced exploitation and based our information around their stories and the North Yorkshire context. For example, one key element is a section for parents around how do I talk to my children around exploitation. Now, we know that parents are a key protective factor for young people, and they have conversations with their children around keeping safe all the time, be that road safety, drug and alcohol, etc. But parents told us they felt they lacked the skills and confidence to talk to their children around exploitation and share those key messages as early as possible around keeping safe. For example, what a healthy or an unhealthy relationship may look like and being able to say no. And here is just a quick snapshot of some of our content. We've consolidated all the amazing national resources that are already out there and considered them in a North Yorkshire context. We've tried to deliver the messages in a variety of learning styles with images and videos, etc. And throughout the site, you will see quotes of real people's voices that we've spoken to. And we really feel this brings the key messages to life on the site. And just to share with you some of the feedback and quotes from people who have already used the website and found it valuable. So I'm aware that I've given you a lot of information in regards to exploitation. So I just wanted to point you in the direction of, firstly, of our Be Aware website. As I've said, there's key information there for professionals, parents and carers and young people. But also on Be Aware, we have consolidated all of our key information with regards to multi-agency child exploitation, including our strategy and our practice guidance. We also have a wide variety of 1-minute guides linked to exploitation, focusing on county lines, cross-border gangs and cuckooing, our independent child trafficking guardianship service, intelligence sharing, MACE level 1 and level 2, MACE, persons who pose a risk of exploitation, modern slavery and the use of the national referral mechanism, Operation Divan, Operation Choice, and submitting a referral to the National Referral Mechanism for a Child. So lots of information, but please be aware that it is there on the website and it's available for when you need it. So that's always kept up to date for you. Now, I just wanted to share with you finally a really key piece of information with regards to our partnership information sharing form. Now, the Partnership Information Sharing Form gives professionals a safe and direct way to share information with North Yorkshire Police. So information shared may include information around a concerning incident, suspicious activity, an unusual exchange between 2 or more people, or something that makes a professional feel uncomfortable. Now, please note that this doesn't supersede any safeguarding referrals, and if you had any concerns about a child or young person, that would be submitted through your normal safeguarding procedures. But the Partnership Information Sharing Form is a really key piece of information to share those additional parts of information or things that you may hear or see that make you feel as a professional uncomfortable, particularly around any suspicious activity or things that you may have picked up from conversations or in the community that you feel will be important to share. So we've put together a list of frequently asked. So let's have a quick recap. The signs of exploitation can be subtle and can be similar to what people may consider to be normal adolescent behaviour. It's important, as we've spoken about throughout this workshop, to be professionally curious, to really think about a young person's behaviour and consider the reasons behind it. We have lots of information around professional curiosity, which can be accessed on our website. We've spoken a lot about a child's online behaviours, and I think it's important to be really mindful about how important the online world is for young people and their lives online, and to be asking questions about what they're doing online and what apps they're using and things like that. We've got a wealth of resources out there with regards to child exploitation. We've spoken at length about Be Aware, and we have a lot of 1-minute guides. We would ask that you and your team familiarise yourself with the Partnership Information Sharing Form. Again, it's very clearly on our website, and we would like you to share that with your teams. It's important to think that even if you work with very young children, your vital eyes and ears in our communities help us to understand what's going on. The information really is vital, and we want you to share it. Please keep up to date with our partnership bulletin. Again, you can sign up to that on our website and follow us on our social media channels where you can see any key updates. If anyone doesn't currently attend our MACE Level 2 meetings, and you would like more information about attending or more information about what the meetings involve, please get in touch. I've added my email there, catherine.morrison@northyorks.gov.uk, for more information. Similarly, if you have any other questions with regards to child exploitation, please do get in touch. So that brings our workshop to an end. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen, and hopefully you've picked up some extra key information about exploitation in North Yorkshire. I would ask that just as you are finishing listening to this workshop, take a little bit of time to reflect on the discussions that we've had today and think about what you've learned. Highlight a few actions that you're going to take out of this. What are you going to share with your colleagues? And what actions are you going to take forwards in terms of sharing those bits of vital information? And think about what impact that's going to have. There's a really important quote on this last slide that says, even if you think it's probably nothing, it could be something. Sharing that information could be the vital piece to help keep a child safe. Thank you very much for listening today. Thank you.